Please use the listed chapters in order to jump to the particular articles you're looking for. Thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Wanderer's Guide to Esterra podcast. I am your Wandering Guide, Luke, ever as always. And it's been a second, all things considered. I have not been super diligent with getting part 2 here out. I've had a lot of stuff come over the several days, including the day I should have streamed this live. At time of recording, it is Friday, the 14th of March, the day before, realistically, I would be set to do my next stream, which I will likely be doing at some point. I'm trying to sort of get everything into a organized place properly on top of all the stuff I'm doing, trying to get everything into a nice little manageable line for myself. But other than that, I'm still going to endeavor to get all these out and done as soon as I can, at minimum, before the coming autumn summit. Speaking of which, this is the Concord LARP podcast, well, my Concord LARP podcast, rather, and currently doing the coverage of the Autumn 2025 Winds of the World. If you haven't watched part 1, go watch part 1. A lot of good stuff there. Part 2 is going to have plenty more. Part 3, I know for a fact we'll have more again. But yeah, this is part 2. We are going over the situations regarding the war in the Steinvaults, the war in Wayland. Sorry, not war in Wayland. My apologies. Calm down, Bordevar. You don't need to worry. We'll get to that. The war in Windholm, my apologies, and the war in Risenderholz. We will get to those momentarily. For those of you that have not bought your Concord tickets, please buy your Concord tickets. Get that done. Very important. You need to do that. The ticket prices are only going to increase to the point that they are at their maximum price of 175 Australian dollars, at which point that is now your best option. So get those tickets bought. Let's see all those Romic numbers for attendance go up. I know they can go higher than what they are the last time I checked, so let's get those numbers up, hey? Number 2, get your character submitted. If you have any experience point expenditure you need to do, any experience point refunding and then respending you need to do, or any reworks as a new player, as per your free rework after your first game as a new player, make sure you do that. Including any kind of including any kind of opportunities as granted by the Winds of the World to do any emailing to the Concord team. At the moment, to my understanding of observations of such things in these Winds of the World, the cut-off date is the 11th of April, from what I can tell. So make sure if you have anything to do regarding these winds in terms of emailing into the Concord team as relates to stuff in the winds that you would like to do, make sure you please get those emails in by the 11th of April. Thank you. Right, so with all that said, done and out of the way, let's roll into the first winds article as relates to the war in Steinvaults, the last fool of the one-eyed king. One moment. Here we go.
The Last Fool of the One-Eyed King. War in the Steinvaults. Parents across the turn of the sphere often trot out the old adage that bullies are cowards. If you stand up to them, surely they will leave you alone. While there are more than a few young people with blackened eyes and split lips owing to this piece of knowledge, there is likely some truth in it. The Boar's Head clan, those mountain folk of the Steinwalds, have thrown their weight around the Concord for years at this point. Their relentless need for captives to work at their frozen plans, and their sneering contempt for Concordian unity have become plain to see. For seasons they had survived at the edges of Concordian consideration, by boon of being not worth the trouble. But this tormentor dreamt too big, pushed too far, and when the Concord stood up to them, they did so with thousands of armoured boots.
Not happy. Not at all. Yes, the push against the Boar's Head clan has happened. And we will get to the results of that. I agree with everything said here. The Boar's Head really were just getting to the point of a bullying a nuisance quite a bit. Yeah, the opportunity arose. It was taken, and we will, in a moment, learn the result of such a thing. Certainly been a case that the Boar's Head had been a continuous problem, for want of a better term. Very much so. For both the peoples of Windholm and for the peoples of Wayland. Several raids, several, for want of a better term, ingress, I suppose. I mean, raids is realistically the best point, but you know, Windholm also had the added downside of also being attacked by the bear cult slash or AKA rather the rotted pelt cult that have since been dealt with, quote unquote. But yeah, tricky days. We shall yet see. So let us now move on to the next, the next part one of the last fall of the One-Eyed King. That of crushed in between frozen steel.
Crushed betwixt frosted steel. The sound of ice crunching beneath feet would be once more broken.
Sure is cold up, I swear, on my bill and block. If you complain about the weather one more sphere's damn time, I'll push you off the nearest cliff myself.
A small chuckle spreads through the soldiers at the thought, some murmuring agreements for both sides, a source of simple enjoyment amidst the snowy valleys of the Steinbolt Pass.
Well, if you'd peel yourself away from your blasted pole arm for a second, you'd feel it too. No clue how you keep hold of that thing with no gloves in this weather. Maybe it's not a choice. Poor bastard's pretty fused with it in this frost.
A new voice, eager to join the jabs at his comrades, affirmed and encouraged by yet more mirth and laughter.
Hey, feels like just yesterday we were down in Muckrem kicking out some wizards. Now here we are up in the mountains, putting down some feral boars. Guess they weren't joking when they said join the army and travel. Hold on a second. Does anyone else hear that?
The crunch of snow and the sound of conversation would finally be interrupted by a thunderous rumbling not too far further down the pass, soon followed by the echoes of hollering and combat.
Alright lads, you know the drill. Get to your positions, knuckle down and let's get about it.
The Iron Brawlers would move in great force into the Steinbolt Pass over the summer season, the only time at which the pass is not effectively impassable. Under Brigadier Griff Baker's orders, the army would split into two primary forces of nearly 2,000 common soldiers each, with one force moving to each entrance to the pass. With an intent to herd and harry the Boar's Head clan from each side, the two forces would enter the pass on the same date and attempt to meet in the middle, fighting as cautiously as possible to minimize risk while still taking ground. Such a strategy would be designed to take advantage of the narrow nature of the territory, bordered on each side by the Steinvolts, and as such difficult to progress through as a singular large group. While the fighting force of each group would be technically lower than if they had progressed all at once, their unified attack on two fronts was designed to split the Boar's Head clan's attention in half, bringing them back down to more equal footing. Upon entering the pass, each force would array themselves as they saw fit, bolstered by a small number of heroes and their personal fighting forces. So long as their surroundings were thoroughly checked and cleared of enemy combatants, the standing order would be quite clear. Kill the enemy, take the land. There would be no perfect supply line and communication here, as with the Legion in Mancante Terra, but progress would nonetheless be quick and responsive due to the more constrained area of the Steinvolt Pass. It would not be difficult at all to come to the aid of fellow soldiers engaged in nearby battle, so long as the canyons, slopes, and gorges of the pass allowed for it. Nonetheless, the fighting would be harsh. The Boar's Head clan would be fighting in their home territory, and the Iron Brawlers but a cautious invader. Still, with the enemy's attention split in two fronts, the Bordovarian army would outnumber them easily, and find themselves matching a furious defence with a bloody steadfastness. For the next few months, all the soldiers in the brigade would come to know as snow, war, and blood. Eventually, there would be but one final mountain left to climb, one final holdout to mercilessly put down. In the rough centre of the pass, where the split forces of the army would form once more into one unified brigade, would sit a half-built fortress of stone and ice. Clearly protecting within it one of two of the largest settlements seen by Bordovarians so far, and standing as a shield for the other high up on a mountain behind it. These settlements, clearly the chosen final stand of the Boar, would seem almost pitifully small to the army outside their half-wall, and such pity may even have been warranted, had the short history with the enemy be filled with anything other than violence and greed. The fortress would not last long. Here, the Iron Brawlers would make their final push against the Boar's Head clan. Here, would the rest of the campaign be spent, in what could barely be called a siege against an enemy so plainly outmatched. Here, would the shouts of war be matched by the cries of anguish and rage. Here, would victory be claimed for the Concord, and blood be repaid so quickly and curtly in yet more blood. Game information. The Concord has won a campaign in the Steinvolt Pass, crushing and routing the Boar's Head clan army that is present. With nowhere for the Boar's Head clan army to retreat, the army has been destroyed. The remaining fighters and leaders are attempting to flee even deeper into the mountains to freeze and die, or perhaps to regroup and rearm, becoming a future foe for the Concord. There will be an opportunity to face the last of the Boar's Head clan's fighters in a strategic conflux at this summit. Victory will mean that the warriors of the Boar's Head clan will be forever vanquished, never again to threaten the Concord. Spoils of war for defeating an enemy army and conquering a territory have been given to the war chamber, as is customary. There will be decisions relating to the conquering of the Boar's Head clan for the general of the Iron Brawlers.
And there we have it. The Boar's Head army has been destroyed, with a strategic conflux opportunity on the horizon. How do you like that? I think that's pretty damn good. I think that's pretty damn good. Well done for the Ironhide Brawlers. And I think that's a pretty damn solid situation. It does, again, knowing, the stuff that's ahead, there's of course, there's more information regarding the Boar's Head situation, varied and complex as it is, but this is good. This is fantastic. This is just out and out enemy defeated, and an opportunity to remove the Boar's Head as a enemy going forward, I think is a pretty damn good opportunity. Whether or not we're going to, whether or not the War Chamber will vote to take up that strategic complex is a different point, as there is a lot more complex situations, as there always is, regarding war and War Chamber decisions. But nevertheless, that is certainly a victory, and I'm certainly going to be happy about that, one way or another. Let's pivot on now to our next little next sub-article for the last Ball of the One-Eyed King in A Throne You Can't Describe.
A throne you can't describe. The crackle of the fire blazing in the hearth of the lodge seemed almost unnaturally quiet to the people around it, so focused as they found themselves. The table around which they stood was covered in maps of the Steinvault Pass, aged but annotated nonetheless. The knock at the door, brief and sharp, would signal it was finally time to move. Let's go get our people back. The stern nod of rumbled miners and the heave of Summiters' packs onto heroic shoulders would be all the arguments needed. They were captives in the Steinvault Pass, under the violent hands of Boar Clan raiders, and while the rest of the valley moves to simply remember them, there would remain stoic few who would see them brought home. A low whistle would hum through the wooded forest, made in kind by differing short tones. A sign, one of careful safety and agreement to meet. Out of the forested shadows would appear cloaked figures, bows slung over shoulders, and griffin braces gleaming in what little moonlight pierces the canopies. If we are all present, we should make haste. Barely a word of agreement would be spoken as King's Rangers looked to the mountains before them and began to move. Bordvarian people, against their will and in danger of their lives, wait for rescue beyond the forest. There would be a duty to fulfill, and heroes all too willing to shed blood to see it done. The cold wind whipped through the now empty collection of homesteads, barely habitable even now in the summer. Signs of brutal fighting could be seen everywhere, a clear result of the war between the Iron Brawlers and Boar's Head just a few days prior. Yet it was not this that drew the attention of the summiter, as such a sight was familiar this far into the pass. No, it would be the strange markings on the ground, and the far too recent blood within it. A sacrificial circle, clear to any who would see it. There would be no sign of fighting near the circle, no dead warriors or soldiers or even broken weaponry. The circle, surrounded by strange and unknown runes, as it were, showed but one remnant worth mentioning. One horrific memory left to pass along to those that found it. Marked in now frozen blood, purposeful, and at the clear cost of at least a single Concordian life. The symbol of a dragon. The twang of the bowstring cut the shout of the raider short. The arrow, landing perfectly in the raider's neck, would fill their mouth with blood, rather than angry words. The weapon clanged to the stone beneath their feet, and soon their lifeless body would follow. A simple and swift end to a brutal life. The rangers swept through the narrow tunnels of the frozen cave, clearing it of its hidden enemies with merciless intent. This was no military raid, but simply one of the last hopeful locations of hidden captives left. Each past settlement or home empty save for strange ritual markings and the clear loss of Concordian life. A shout echoed down the cave as the last raider was felled, clenched fists and muttered words following. Another dead end. Another strange ritual circle. Now only one place remained, one final holdout to check, one last fortress. We'll move at night, following a tall cliff edge above the north side of the fortress. It's risky, but we can do it. We know our mountains well enough. Night works well for us. In that case, we'll see what we can do about scaling and clearing from the wall beneath your cliff face. That way, we can cover each other if something goes wrong. Together, then. The clasp of hands and firm pats on shoulders would unite the summiters and King's Rangers in their purpose. Shared reports of the north and south of the pass would align far too well, and it would be clear to all that should any captives remain alive, it would be here, amongst the largest settlements of the Boar. It would be here, behind the stone and frost half-wall, currently besieged by the full force of the Iron Brawlers. And it would be here that any chance of rescue comes to fruition or failure. Out of breath, yet finally safe after near full week of ambushing and escaping, the forward scout leans against the wooden post, embedded in the stone next to her. It's been damned hard, she thinks to herself, but spheres am I glad that we at least got a few people out. She looks over the edge of the cliff she stood atop, wincing at the thought of the long fall she had just forced on the raider who attacked her. Nearly done though. One last hurdle. Pulling a whistle and a horn from her belt, she blows the whistle twice short and sharp, before giving the horn one long bellow. The order for a full retreat. It was time to go home, at last. She breathes out a sigh of relief, finally happy to be done and beyond ecstatic that there were some Concordian lives still able to be saved. But the sigh held with it regret, a melancholy that eked its way out for just a moment. She knew what was to come, what choice the heroes must make in but a few weeks from this moment. It would be a difficult decision to make, but she knew she would not be a part of it. At least I'm alive, I suppose. The thought echoed through her mind as the world of snow around her ceased to exist, replaced only by one of flame. Game information. The combined efforts of 14 different summiters, King's Rangers and Rumwald miners would see the Steinvolt Pass combed completely for surviving Concordian captives. In tandem with the work of the Iron Brawlers, such an act would be near effortless to almost 2,000 total numbers set to the task. Even still, nothing could be found throughout most of the pass except cryptic and worrying signs. It would be in the half-built fortress, and beyond that, success would finally show itself in droves. Perhaps due to the Bordavarian invasion, or perhaps for some other purpose, the captives have all been relocated to the largest Boar's Head settlements. It would be here that dozens of prisoners would be rescued and escorted to the Brawlers' military camp laying siege to the fortress itself. Such a daring act would take time and be risky, but nonetheless done successfully, thanks to the sheer numbers present and the supporting brigade. Seemingly in spite of this, a giant beast has taken to wing over the Steinvolts, called by magic and desperation. It hunts for warm-blooded prey. There will be a very dangerous and difficult skirmish conflux for Bordavarian and Iron Valley forces during this summit. Success will rescue the remaining few captives from the Boar's Head clan, and see whatever foul faith the clanners hold defeated and banished.
Indeed, you heard correctly. The summiters, rangers, and miners have been successful, somewhat. However, the desperation of the Boar's Head called something horrid. You heard correctly. It would appear that winging over the Steinvolt Mountains may yet be something akin to a dragon. fire and wing, beast, magic, desperation. Who knows if, we'll have a physical dragon puppet or costume or whatever for the coming summit. Who knows? Might just be a effect, But, dragon. I'm gonna live by dragon until told/shown otherwise from what I consider a viable and reliable source. So that's cool. That's awesome. Also, rip to the ranger getting toasted. Let's just say toasted. Little morbid, but it is what it is. Oh boy. Yep. Tough and dangerous skirmish coming this summit. I do not envy anyone going on that one. Now, when it's so plainly stated, it's going to be difficult and dangerous. The team's serious when they're putting in warnings like that. But let us move on to somewhat happier news. Somewhat. Some rather interesting developments, I think. In that of the Fool's Stone Fortress.
The Fool's Stone Fortress. While the Boar's Head clan flees into fantasy, or the mountains they find themselves fear to tread, the Concord is left amidst ruin and woe. What was once an inhospitable wasteland, tamed by harsh mountain folk wielding axes and grim resolve, has fallen under Concordian control, for better or worse. From southern Wayland to northern Windholm, the Steinvolt Pass is a labyrinth of yawning canyons, gravel-strewn mountain slopes, and frozen caves. Nothing grows here save foolhardy goats and foul-tempered mountain beasts. Even with the Boar's Head's hidden paths revealed, the region is barely navigable in winter, plagued by frozen rain and oppressive snowfall. Summer offers little reprieve. Snowmelts bring landslides and flash floods that crash through the north and south alike. The defeat of the bulk of the Boar's Head forces has left the region in flux. The clan has abandoned not only their half-built fortress, but also their meagre settlements. Fighters, priests, and anyone able to carry supplies have retreated deeper into the mountains, leaving behind remnants of their people scattered across the land. Two key sites remain: Falvig, huddled within the ruins of the unfinished fortress, and Cothicol, perched high in a western mountain valley where meltwater slows and stubborn life ekes out an existence with equal parts madness and grit. Civil service estimates place the Steinvolt Pass's remaining population at over 5,000, spread across settlements, caves, and hidden refuges. These are mostly non-combatants: the too young, the too old, the infirm, and those burdened with families. Though they have cast down their weapons before the advancing Concordian forces, their eyes still burn with defiance. For centuries they have hated the lowlanders, and no abandonment by their leaders will shake that enmity. They are the descendants of kings, even clad in rags. They will not kneel. As the last remnants of the Boar's Head clan are defeated, retreat, or vanish into secrecy, the Concord must now turn its gaze to the future. Despite its barren landscape and scant resources, the Steinvolt Pass is a keystone to eastern defence. With sufficient investment, it could also become a vital trade route, linking the Iron Valley with the Kingdom of Bordevar, a dream unrealised since the Boar's Head clan first emerged to block the way. But ruling the pass comes at a cost. Whoever takes up the mantle must contend with a population that loathes them, a climate indifferent to life, soil that yields nothing willingly, and a history chiselled into stone and soaked in blood. They will be the warden of the pass. Game information. Given the small size of the Steinbolt Pass region, only containing one territory, a new title has been created to govern the region, rather than a normal senator position. The title is Warden of the Pass. The Concord is currently facing numerous crises in the Steinbolt Pass as it attempts to consolidate its control in the region and its people, all while winter approaches. There will be numerous decisions and opportunities available to the Warden of the Pass, the High Reeves Council, the Ducal Council of Wayland, and the Senators of Windholm and Wayland this summit.
There we are. A region only containing one territory. So a non-senator title has been created, Warden of the Pass. Now, a little info about the Warden of the Pass. Though I don't have the title readout in front of me, I can give you the barest minimum based in my mind. However, if you wish to read it specifically, please go to the Winds of the World, article The Last Fool of the One-Eyed King in autumn 2025. Click that, scroll down, and you will find a link to the Warden of the Pass title. Go and give it a read. But the basic version is the title is held for 1 year, no limit on how many times someone may be put in the position. So that's all fine. The holder must be of the Iron Valley or of Bordevar. It is elected by the Senate specifically, and the holder will gain some amount of resources one summit and a different an amount of resources differently the following summit. And then, obviously, after it is re-elected, it is elected in the winter. Or not winter, sorry, I misspoke. In the autumn. As Concord is now shifting to a autumn-spring summits rather than winter-summer. So, my apologies. So, essentially, this is not too dissimilar for the groundskeeper of Rickensteer. The position that can be earned by either Bordavarian commonship or the Greenwielders, chosen by competition between individuals of each. This one, instead of being some kind of competition, is instead, of course, a vote by the Senate. I personally, as a player, just pure player, no character opinion, I quite agree with it. An argument could be made that it could be a tradition of either Bordevar or the Iron Valley that decides who it is. However, as a player looking at it, I disagree with that opinion because it's not exclusively Bordevar or Valley. So it being a Senate vote rather than anything else, I think is actually perfectly adequate. It's also the holder of a single territory region, not just an island in the middle of a lake. Unlike the Rickensteer situation. So I actually think this is quite a viable thing. And the position clearly is going to have a lot to do right at the outset. A lot of the remaining Boar's Head non-combatants are certainly stubborn and carrying a lot of enmity, which does make sense, I suppose. It doesn't make clear that the warriors and leaders have fled. That's probably to do with the strategic conflicts yet to come, along with potentially others, but we'll have to see. But yeah, new title now holding the position. And that is potentially, if all things go ahead and the strategic conflux happens and the skirmish, again, to reclaim the captured Concordian citizens is successful, in theory, that is the Boar's Head clan done forever. Maybe. We'll have to see. Big stuff. Big stuff. what to think about, what to look at. There's, from what I hear, the scuttlebutt is there's going to be a lot of hot contention and competition, rather, for the position of Warden of the Pass. So it's exciting to see where all of that is going to sort of come to a head at, especially with the position having seats. I say seats, being able to attend both the Reeves Council of the Valley and the Ducal Council of Whiteland. Super interesting. So let's now make our way over to the next article for This Wins. Let us move on over to prod and poke over and over until all that is left is wrath. War in Windholm.
To prod and poke over and over until finally all that is left is wrath. War in Windholm. It is the words of those in power that determine the ways of war. This has never been more true for the people of Windholm, as the severed lords are declared an enemy of the Concord, yet again bringing to bear the weight of Balags and Brothersley. These regions, which have been out of grasp for so long, are now the homes of a true enemy who must simply be slain. There is no talking, no diplomacy, simply war. And it seemed the severed lords agree. It would not be Concordian boots marching into Balag's holdfast that would start this war in earnest, but enemy boots marching into Windholm. The sound of thousands upon thousands of boots would fill the air, heralding the arrival of Adenoska, and the view of far more warriors than ever thought possible would bolster around Havika's holdfast. War has come to Windholm, and it has come in force.
Very, very spooky. Indeed, the Severed Lords march. Oh boy. Yep. Windholm is in for some stuff. But hey, new situations can encourage a lot of, passion. But you'll have to see as we move into the first article that the death of peace of mind.
The death of peace of mind. For many, it would be difficult to imagine those that used to be Elsevier feeling anything. For so long they had been an unknown, unknowable force, with no emotions at all crossing their faces. Even in pain and in death, their silent vigil was kept, a presumed hive mind, not interested in communicating with the Concord in any capacity, least of all about sentiments alien to them. But, when the schism occurred, and the Elsevier in the east gave way to the Severed Lords, even this most basic fact about them was called into question. The Severed Lords could feel, so they said. The Severed Lords could yearn. The Severed Lords could even love. Perhaps, had the Concord not declared war on the Severed Lords, other, less savoury emotions could have stayed dormant. Perhaps, had the senator for Windholm not claimed she who holds the fortress to be tadpole-born scum in a letter passed through the troops of Adenoska, the Concord could have struck out first. Perhaps things could have been different. It is in the depths of a summer evening, the sky blanketed in midnight, the singing of crickets and toads in the air, that the people of Brackenlow first see it. Initially, it looks like it could be a miracle spoken about from the Age of Stone, the sun being lifted back into the sky in the middle of the night, the horizon beginning to flicker orange. However, it does not take long for even the children to understand that, though they often watch the sunrise from behind Balag's holdfast in the distance, it is never bathed in light like this. The sun does not have such malice in its rays, nor does such enmity shine from behind the monument to all that the valley once was. Indeed, when the skies above Windholm are alighted with flame of every pyre atop Balag's, there is no question as to the cause. Every flickering fire blazes with the vitriolic fury of Havika, called a thief in a home that she has rightfully earned, and would have freely given in exchange for another. Soon after the burning light pervades the landscape, those in smaller homesteads closer to the fortress look deeper into the horizon with hopeful hearts. Hopefully, the flames are a signal of ineffectual fury, trapped safely within the walls of their military heart. Hopefully, it will take time for Havika's troops to rally around Balag's, to prepare it for war. Unfortunately for them, she who holds the fortress seems to have no need to loosen her hold on her home. Beneath the radiance of her rage, there is another thundering wrath rolling through the feet of thousands upon thousands upon thousands, marching in perfect tandem over the border into Windholm. Adenoska anticipated the Concord declaring war. It brought about no feeling other than resolve. The Lord of the Lowland was unmoved by critiques based on the Elsevier. They are not who they once were. But to threaten a loved one, to announce an intention to leave her broken corpse upon the ramparts of her home, elicited a sensation that Adenoska had not yet felt. The need to clench hands into frigid fists to still vibrating nerves. The need for considered deep breaths to quell flashing storms. The need to tear the Concord limb from limb, to wash the valleys clean with their blood, until there are none left to threaten Havika. When Adenoska marches his forces past the home of his love, and into the territory of their enemies, there is not a single homestead on the border who is unsure of whether the severed lords can feel. When the sight of the burning pyres of Balag's is nearly eclipsed by innumerable soldiers, there is not a single individual from those homesteads alive to tell of the immutable rage in the eyes of the enemy. When forces of the severed lords meet the forces of the Concord on the field of battles to come, there will be no fear in their hearts, only a newly discovered wrath, determined to be put to use. Game information. Following the declaration of war by the Concord on the severed lords, the forces of Adenoska, Lord of the Lowlands, have marched upon Windholm, more than prepared to wage war. However, the magic of the severed lords has obscured the power of his force. Current estimations are between 6,000 and 8,000. The Concord unfortunately knows very little about the severed lords and their tactics. As such, knowledge of their traits and capabilities are limited. There will be an opportunity for Iron Valley forces to do battle against the severed lords at this summit. More information can be found in the entry below.
So. Oh boy. Yep. The severed lords are marching to war. And, yep. Makes it pretty clear. Yep. There's two of them. And they feel. Yep. And we just taught them wrath. There's a lot I'd like to say, but I'm gonna leave that for the field. So yeah, yep. Now Windholm is under threat, big time. There's a lot of weird severed lords magic and power going on with that, which we still don't fully understand. But 6,000 to 8,000 might be less, might be more. We don't know. But Pavika and Adenoska are angry, to say the least. Resolved, furious, defiant. All really dangerous things. At least that's my observation anyway. But yes. Let's roll over then to the next one. Give a little more, the final little understanding of the current situation facing, I believe, Eastern Windholm, if my memory serves. We now come to light the fire of the pinnacle.
Light the fire of the pinnacle. A stubby finger jabs at the map of Windholm, pointing to Brackenlow and its vast farmlands. If I were invading from the east, I would want to burn this to the ground. People with no food have no fight, particularly if I didn't need it when all is said and done. Burn the grain, salt the earth. Looking around, agreeing nods and concerned faces. Continuing on, if the bite back from the populace is negligible, the next step would be to conquer Brackenlow and hold it. From that crossroad, the whole of Windholm is easily accessible. But, assuming Brackenlow can either hold at the farms or the city itself, moving south to secure Godreen and Abelard makes the most sense. A question from the onlookers, querying why one wouldn't instead push through into the Vale. Excellent question. Honestly, fighting in the shadow of the Hollow Hearth is a nightmare against a defending force. Assume they know their forest like the back of their hands and avoid it. That's not even taking into consideration the strangeness around the Vale of Stags at the moment. Murmurs of acknowledgement, followed by brief silence quickly broken. A small voice, belonging to a child no more than 10, asking what chance Windholm has in the face of this danger, met with a confident and broad smile. Well, little one, isn't that the question? If you ask me, and you did, if it were just us and the valley's own, then I think our future would be bleak. We may be the inheritors and proud of it, but we are only so many. But it's not just us. We have allies that we have defended, and have defended us in turn. With the Concord, we stand together. An echoing chorus would bring a smile to the nervous child's face, and suddenly the impending invasion did not seem so scary, at least for a short moment. The people of Godstream's Pinnacle, that small settlement beneath the height for which it's named, come together to discuss the coming Severed Lord's army. As the people who have been closest to Balag's Holdfast and the King's Pass for so long, there was a confident belief that their know-how would need to play at least some part in the coming war. As the Watchers of the Holdfast, they would prove that they can do their part. None would deny that these valley folk, having pressured the Elsevier at the Holdfast for so long, and usually been the first to suffer retaliation, have some small sway in their words. As such, it would not take long for their proposition for the defence of Windholm to spread across the High Valley, and for the people to begin to take what action they could. First to be considered would be the safety of Brackenlow and its farms. A vicious and conquering army that, as far as could be told, did not need to eat, would surely start by removing the greatest source of food. It would be a crippling blow to Windholm to lose such a place, particularly if it is raised and salted. The farmers of Brackenlow, hearing this news, would work quickly to arm themselves, even going so far as to request help from Abelard in manning some small-scale, personal defences ahead of time. The distance from Balags to Brackenlow is shorter than any other settlement save Goddream Pinnacle, with naught between it but landscape itself. Propositions of assumed efficiency make it the clearest target, but only time could truly tell. Should Brackenlow hold or otherwise not be the first target, next to worry about would be Goddream itself, a small settlement easily taken by an invading force. While certainly considered to not be the most strategically optimal choice, nor the easiest to defend, no matter who controls it. It is still the closest to Balak's holdfast. Its loss would devastate the people who care for it, let alone live in it. While the Vale of Stags is still certainly traversable, the people of Goddream generally dismiss it, and Heinsgraff by extension, as initial targets for attack. Though much of this seems to stem from the mystical nature of the Vale as of recent seasons, such a thing would be believed to only hold value in its unexpected nature, rather than its strategic benefit, particularly with the Steinvault Pass posing a potential threat behind it. Discussion of the defensive perspective within Windholm would carry for many weeks, but such things would not be a source of calamity, but instead of confidence. Such a threat, from an enemy that has been promised to know fear, becomes a uniting force for those who chose such a bloody inheritance. Windholm, and its very people, would be prepared to shed blood against the enemy that invades it. They would choose death before they suffer yet another long retreat. The High Valley would fight for what is theirs. Game information. Despite the expected aggression of the Severed Lords into Windholm, there appears to be an air of confident defiance rather than scared concern. While certainly such a thing ebbs and flows among the population, many decisions of the heroic delegation are echoed by the people who know them to quell any cataclysmic fears. The people will fight for their land, and not give it freely. The fighting nature of its people has earned Eastern Windholm the following territory trait.
The territory trait, as a note, is listed on the article itself. The short version is, whenever a valley army fights in Eastern Windholm, actually, I believe it's Windholm as a whole. I'd have to double check, but still, if they were to take the heroic defense / bloody defense action, there is a bonus. It's that simple. It's only done with valley armies, however. That part has to be known, and that specific action has to be taken in order for it to come into effect. But that's pretty cool, I think. And that brings us to the end of that entire wins setup as relates to the war in Windholm. Overall, could have been better. Could have been worse, but perhaps the worse has yet to come. We'll have to see. It's also nice to see the fleshing out of the Windholm area as a whole, getting an idea of where more settlements are, talks of Abelard, the Goddream pinnacle as well. Really, really cool. Love to see it. So, have a big think on that. Go look at different stuff. Go have a look at these specific traits. It's always good to see, especially for me, who loves all this new information, to get more ideas and more ideas for like future characters, get an idea of the layout without looking at the map. Really, really cool. Yeah, go look at this stuff. It's awesome. Also, we're getting new maps over time as well, so make sure you go check out the new maps. It's always nice. Love a map game. So let's pinwheel over to the last of the 3 articles we're covering this episode. That being My Blade Strikes Where Lightning Does Not, the war in Risenderholz.
My blade strikes where lightning does not. War in Risenderholz. This past season, the last barony of the Weald held the line against the undead, the plague, and the heathen, sometimes all 3 at once. The Concord's northern border is a place of danger and hope in equal measure. But over summer there have been far more victories than defeats. The Marble Gauntlet has met defeat against Bordovarian steel, and the north remains firmly within the hands of the Concord. Such is the nature of war that it can drag up pain from the depths. Will the people of the Weald and of the kingless kingdom be happy with what they have found?
Ominous. Very, very ominous. We love to see it. But that is merely the intro. We're now going to go over to the first of two sub-articles for this one. The first, Brothers in Hated Arms.
Brothers in Hated Arms. A year ago, the Concord was emerging from the largest scale threat it had weathered as a unified people. More than 40,000 undead foes bore down on Wayland and threatened to crush Bordevar, finishing a decades-long war in one summer season. But the Concord held together, and through the sacrifice of all, no land was lost. Since that time, strikes from the Onyx aristocracy have slowed to a near stop. The Starscar border forts stand resolute against future invasions, and there appears to be more than enough to concern the walking dead within their own stolen borders. But a near stop is not a complete stop. Over the summer of 224 into 225, the Marble Gauntlet struck at eastern Resinderholtz, crossing the Eisen River and bringing their blasphemous war to the people of the Greenweald. The Marble Gauntlet has long been the vanguard of Onyx invasion into Bordevar and the Concord at large. This cohort of risen knights and their foul retinues carry rotting Bordevarian banners, clutch the ancestral blades of lost bloodlines, and claw inexorably towards the still beating heart of Bordevar. This most recent strike into Resinderholtz was a flanking manoeuvre that could cut off Wayland from its allies, all the while gaining much-needed bodies and vengeance for the Gauntlet. But the Legion of the Blackheart Bear was engaged elsewhere, fighting far to the south in Mancante Terra. The Steel Children of Eisen could not return to defend their home. But the Concord fights its battles together, not alone. The Crusaders' Road was full of fluttering banners, the clatter of full plate, and the joyous singing of common squires. If Thordis Revet and his walking corpses wished to call themselves knights, then they could see what true Bordevarians who held their valours close were capable of. Basing his headquarters in the Eisen College of War, Sir Bremer the Broad, banneret of the first banner of Bordevar, made no illusions as to his intent. This was not a campaign of measured movement, but the righteous fury of a resurgent Bordevar coming to the aid of a brother in arms. The knights of the first banner were commanded to yield no quarter, to fight until their armour ran red with their lifeblood, and to slay the heretical dead. For their part, the Marble Gauntlet did not snarl and rage in response to Bremer's heroic tactics. Rather, the forces of Thordis leveraged a campaign of measured warfare. Ghouls and Risen would rise up from the dark waters of the Eisen and crawl into the eastern reaches of Resinderholtz, establishing a beachhead of darkwood barges to disgorge their armoured payload. While the retreat was held by the crude undead, the Death Knight of the Gauntlet carved bloody paths into havens, lost shrines, and the outskirts of Eisen, before moving to retreat back across the safety of their river. But the first banner had no time for pleasantries, no time to allow the reasonable retreat of an enemy force. Hammer would meet hammer, anvil would break anvil. Each Onyx assault was met either in the field or on the retreat by steel-clad behemoths barreling through the underbrush, as if they were the wrath of Arcadian itself. Glittering in the speckled light through the trees, Bordevarian knights duelled against the rustled hulks of Death Knights, the thunderclap of their blades ringing out through the cursed woods. While heroes on the rise and heroes long dead fought for supremacy, their allies scrambled for their own victories. Squires and aspirants driving blades into the rotting bodies of risen corpses, huntsmen trading arrow barbs with cannibal ghouls, war priests blessing this righteous justice. The order was no quarter given, and none would be. even when the so many great heroes of Bordevar were lost on the muddy banks of the Eisen. Twice, the line is nearly broken. First was in December, when a vast and well-armed force of ghouls struck deep into the Sableheart. Unsupported by Death Knights, this raiding party moved quickly, outpacing and surprising Bordevarian defenders. But the Weald is dangerous for the dead as well as the living, and the predation of boghoffins and other beasties that defend the sovereign heart of the Fey Queen brooked no trespassers. The second demonstrated that while the Marble Gauntlet may be dead, they are certainly not fools. Thordis Revet himself led a powerful strike directly into Eisen Township. Eschewing the Gouldish vanguard, this force managed to make landfall, and fighting was quickly afoot in the streets of the town, with Sir Bremer rallying the defence alongside Ritters from the College of War. Forces of the Banner rallied to their commander, pulling forces from the surrounding countryside into a battle lasting a night and a day. The College of War itself is protected by a young Bordevarian aspirant by the name of Honora, leading a militia of Bordevarian peasants and Ritter students to hold the line. But this was always the intent, drawing much-needed knights away from other locations, essential locations. While the melee raged in Eisen, a smaller force crossed the river to the south and attempted to burn and loot the Eisen Orchard, the Concord's only source of Thunder Oak. Perhaps more troubling was the composition of this force. Undead knights and warriors under a red-white banner, Warden Amelia of House Avalon at their head. As the one-time general of the First Banner, it is unsurprising that the treacherous Warden knew where the Concord was most vulnerable. In the end, it was a detachment of knight aspirants that turned the assault by burning the Avalonian barges, forcing the attackers to retreat before becoming stranded in enemy territory. As the summit drew near, the enemy drew away. It had been a hard season fighting under the watching boughs of the Greenweald. But after all was done, the First Banner had defended Resinderholtz from their cruel simulacra. While their casualties were large, no enemy forces had taken and held ground in Eisen, or its surrounds, for longer than a day. A victory earned in blood. But this would surely happen again. The Onyx aristocracy knows, as the Concord does, that without Eisen and the Sableheart, the Concord cannot march soldiers east during winter. If the Sableheart falls, so does Bordevar. Game information. The Concord has been victorious in the Sableheart this past season, defending against the Marble Gauntlet. It was a tough battle, and forces were evenly matched, but canny choice of orders won the day. Following the campaign, the Marble Gauntlet has retreated to Wolfsbuhl, and will be unable to attack next season. The First Banner of Bordevar begins the campaigning season in the Sableheart, having taken 1,250 casualties, comparable to enemy losses. This battle with the Marble Gauntlet has revealed one of their traits: traitors in the ranks. Ritters, Ritter apprentices, also Dan Bremer, and Honora all have the following roleplay brief. I have fought alongside these people, and together we did great things. I trust them implicitly, and while the battle has ended, they remain my allies, worthy of my sacrifice.
Indeed. The Marble Gauntlet stretches its dead hand out once more. And, once more, the hand is struck away. Good work, First Banner. Of course, the treachery of Sarah Amelia the Warden is noticed. Makes sense. Good tactical move. And comparable losses to the enemy. Pretty solid. Good stuff. The trait, by the way, traitors among the ranks, is effectively just when the Marble Gauntlet is fighting a Bordevarian army, the Bordevarian army will take additional casualties as per traitors to Bordevar among them being revealed and all planted. So, you know, it's not great, but it is what it is. So, the First Banner being in Sableheart, a good, very, very good point, I think, showing that Eisen and the Sable Heart must be protected, and I agree entirely. The Marble Gauntlet not being able to fight out this coming season is pretty solid, so could be an opportunity to march against them, try and get rid of them fully. Maybe. I have to see. So, we're going to move on now to the last wins sub-article for this episode. And that is a rather tricky one. That being, our scars have names. There's some crime about, and a bit of sleuthing to be done to find out the truth. Have a listen.
Our scars have names. After the assault on the Eisen Orchard, it became abundantly clear that the Thunder Oak supply was less of a secret than the Concord would have hoped. The first banner was forced to garrison a rotating group of knights at the orchard to ensure that there were at least enough fighters present to hold the line, should it be required. Over time, the posting became a restful break for the fourth-rate warriors of Bordevar. It was a chance to walk among the massive Thunder Oaks, to repair gear and weapons, and to practice their steel against scouting ghouls, rather than honour-bound death knights. The orchard was a source of great wealth and great import to Resenderholtz, and as such, was often supported by one hunts marshal or another, making sure that the area was at least under watch, something that could stop saboteurs and thieves, but perhaps not a full undead assault. The grand trees, winding paths, and hidden places of Resenderholtz hold many stories, and hide many secrets. Not just for Greenwielders. It wasn't long ago that Bordavarian knights marched through the Sable Heart with armour and blades in hand. Only they were not coming as protectors, but as conquerors, raiders, and adventurers. To the Greenwielders of Vassertal and Resenderholtz, they were known as Stahlrobbers, and to the Bordavarians it was known as the Northern Front. Bordavarian knights, aspirants, mercenaries, and worse saw the Greenweald as a dark, magical place with secret wealth, either in the form of fey magics, Greenwielder goods, or grant tales of martial prowess. Sometimes small bands of a dozen or so would creep into the woods, eager to make off with whatever they could find from an undefended haven, while at other times whole hosts would form under an influential noble and threaten cities. There was never an official state of war, but rather the predations of influential individuals against a fractured and shattering set of polities. This sort of conflict leaves behind a considerable amount of dead, and a not inconsiderable amount of lost wealth, as the trees quickly regrow over bloody battlefields, consigning the dead and their goods to the earth. It was late in February when a quartet of knights departed their post at the Eisen Orchard, with their squires, to seek out one of these lost battlefields. With their post under the watch of squires and aspirants, they marched into the wilderness near Eisen. For these knights it was a reliving of those adventures of questing knights of old, striking out into the Weald with blade in hand and wealth to be found. What follows is lost in blood and malice. Under the eaves of the Weald, 3 of these knights would die. On the outskirts of the Eisen Orchard, a hunts marshal by the name of Amelia Christoph would meet with these knights, her retinue close behind. Over raised voices and drawn blades, blood was spilt. Amelia Christoph lies dead, as does much of her retinue, and the knights Sir Layla the Keen, Sir William the Enchanter, and Sir Uther the Valorous. Only one of Christoph's retinue has survived, a young scout by the name of Oderic Wutenhulg, and a Sir Jeremiah the Phantom lies dying in Carningsfield. Both blame the other, laying the charge of murder at their feet. Neither is much reliable. The magistrate in Eisen, Dr. Bruta Dolsk, has ruled the perpetrator of this heinous crime have suffered as is due with their death. It is unlikely that we will ever know the full truth, but in a time of war such things are lost. But despite the magistrate's ruling, there is an ember of hatred burning here. Sir Jeremiah writes with shaking hands to his senator to see justice done, while Wutenhag begs to be heard by the Baroness for the truth of the matter. The magistrates have washed their hands of the matter, but it remains to be seen if the people of the Concord will. Game information. A violent attack south of Eisen has left 3 Bordovarian knights dead, alongside a hunts marshal and most of their retinue. It is unclear who is the perpetrator, but survivors are both pointing bloody hands at the other party. Magistrates have cleared the matter, but discontent remains. There will be additional information and decisions for the Baron of Resenderholtz, the Senator of Wayland, and the deed holder of the Eisen Orchard. It is likely that failure to act could see the situation worsen, including the risk of revenge attacks from both peoples. The conflicts between Bordovarian and Greenweald are history, but not ancient history. There are many alive who have lived through them, and personal stories and cultural retellings from both sides are present. More information about this conflict can be found here. This circumstance has had no effect on the income of the Eisen Orchard this season.
Indeed. Things afoot, methinks. For those who are curious about that little bit about the history of Bordovar going into the Greenwheel, if you go to that particular sub-article within Winds of the World Autumn 2025, My Blade Strikes Where Lightning Does Not, go to the end, there's a link there that will take you to a document as per the history of conflict between Bordovar and the Greenwheel as in the past. Go give that a read. It's I think it's quite a fun read, if I'm being honest. But yes, there is some crime afoot. Bloody hands being pointed at the other, a lot of blame going around, but a lot of dead. A lot of dead. Big things to think about for those in power, methinks. Very much something to think about. But that is, of course, the end of this episode. Now, with that, of course, the usual stuff. Follow the Twitch channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, comment if you wish. Viewership is plenty, but encouragement is always welcome. And especially, my encouragement to you. I encourage you, of course, to do all you can to play your character as well as you think you can. There is a lot to be done at this coming summit, and indeed for this coming year. There may yet be plenty more in store as time goes on. We have many wins left to go and plenty time yet to observe them. So make sure you keep your eyes up, keep your ears open, and enjoy the amount of in-character time we have left. One training remains, of course, on the 15th of March. At the time of recording is tomorrow. And then after that, there is one more unofficial training in Falcon Mandra on the first Friday of April. That will have a sanctioned roleplay tavern night afterwards, which will be, aside from sanctioned events beyond these, the last times you will have to discuss the wins of the world in character. So, aside from correspondence to one another, of course. So, make sure you get your things ready. Summit rapidly approaches. So, yeah. Do what you can. Get yourself ready to go. There'll be another episode sooner than this one did. I know I'm late. Hopefully the other one comes up a lot quicker. But even in that, I'll still get all of these out before Summit, one way or another. So, with that, I will bid you adieu and catch you in the next episode. Take care. Goodbye.